Working on your own and for yourself is not as easy as it looks. When something goes wrong, it can feel very personal. When I left corporate to become a life coach, it was pretty unexpected what happened next.
I had to realize the painful truth that I didn't have the skills to become an entrepreneur.
What really shocked me in the beginning, it was really difficult for me to, that was really difficult to do. The word that would describe it. Now what happened instead was that I realized I used to have a corporate job, and when I left corporate to become a life coach, it was pretty unexpected what happened next. In corporate, I was really feeling this lack of purpose, lack of meaning. I wanted to help people. I wanted to do work that I actually enjoy deep at the bottom of my soul. Now, what happened instead was that I realized that working on your own and for yourself is not as easy as it looks. So today I'm going to talk about the 6 things that were really hard for me and really shocked me after I left corporate, and how I learned those skills and what those skills actually mean. I am going to tell you about all the mistakes I made and the difficult times I put myself through because I didn't have those skills. These are skills that are really entrepreneurial skills. So if you haven't worked for yourself yet, if you haven't been a freelancer, an entrepreneur, if you haven't run your own business, obviously you're not going to have these skills. And that's kind of normal and natural. So if you're working for yourself, and if your time, your schedule, your deliverables are not controlled by a company, are not controlled by other people, that is fabulous. But freedom requires different skills. So it's not to say that you do not have skills in order to work in corporate, but you need a different set of skills in order to work for yourself. The number one high value skill is planning and organization. I guess you could split them. I'm going to talk about that together. I did not realize until I finished my coach training and I was out in the wide open, kind of being a coach, but not having any clients yet, how much of my time and how much of my work life was actually planned for me. So other people gave me my deliverables for my projects, my goals were given to me by the company, even when I had a lot of flexibility, and a big majority of my day was planned and provided to me by other people. So the meetings that I attended, I didn't usually choose them. They just kind of happened within my area of responsibility, and I had to go to the meeting. I had to do the progress report. I had to speak to a certain stakeholder. So it wasn't really much choice involved. And when I started working for myself, I realized no one controlled my time and no one told me what to do, which was of course fabulous on one side. But on the other side, it was really a word that would describe it, destabilizing, I guess. So it's that feeling of, you're supposed to work, you're supposed to get clients, you're supposed to create your website, you're supposed to pick your niche and do all kinds of things that as a starting entrepreneur or freelancer would do, but I didn't know what order to do them in. And also it was very difficult for me in the beginning to dedicate as much time to work as it would have required in order for me to see results quickly. I was so excited to be outside a corporate job that I did a lot of stuff that were not really helping my business. High value skill number 2. Motivation or self-motivation. There's another element of working for yourself, which is that no one is motivating you. So if you don't show up at work, someone would call you and say, "Where are you? Are you sick?" If you don't deliver some of your targets, someone will ask you the question.
When you're working for yourself, it's different.
Certain days it's going to be really difficult to motivate yourself. Not because you don't like what you're doing, but simply because that's always going to happen. Human performance and human attention and human commitment always goes up and down. That's kind of its natural curve. So on days when you don't really feel like doing anything, there's no one to motivate you. And so over time, I had to build up this skill, which is probably the hardest one for me out of all the skills that I'm discussing today. of how to, even if I don't feel like it, still do the things that I know will generate the results that I'm looking for. I need to step away from, do I feel like it, or does this task get me excited? Is it an exhilarating thing to do, or is it just one of the things that need to be done? So I really needed to learn how to disconnect from the feeling sensation and go like, even if it doesn't feel good, I'm still going to do it. Another high value skill I needed to learn was self-validation. In a corporate setting, simply because you have so many relationships and because you have so many accountabilities, you can't just drop things and no one would notice. Someone will notice and it will come back to you. Because of that, I didn't quite realize how much feedback is coming to you when you are working with other people. In corporate, you always know whether you are on track or not, because people will tell you. They will tell you straight away, yes, that's exactly what we had in mind. Or no, I don't think this is working. I think you should be doing more like this. And being out there and being an entrepreneur, not having anyone to validate my actions, having to learn everything by myself, it made me feel very lonely. But more important than that, not just lonely, but more like I was never quite sure whether I was doing the right thing. So at the back of my mind, there was always this little voice that said, are you sure this is what you're supposed to be doing right now? Are you sure this is what you're supposed to be prioritizing? Are you sure you need to do this before you do that? Maybe you're just starting out as a freelancer or entrepreneur. You don't really know your own value. And it's very difficult to keep going, or at least it was for me, to keep going and keep investing in this new path without knowing whether I'm any good at it, without knowing whether I'm going to the right direction, without knowing anything. So self-validating, learning to be able to tell yourself this is okay, you're doing well. There might be things to figure out, but it's okay. You just keep going. This is good. This is gonna get you there is a really essential skill. Another important skill to learn is how to self-soothe. Soothing and emotions is not something we talk about in business and setting up businesses. We're usually very focused on data, strategy, process, the client, and all of that. But I think there's a very deep and emotional side of entrepreneurship. At least it was for me. Definitely, if you are coming into entrepreneurship from the perspective that you're looking for self-expression, you're looking to make a real impact, you're wanting to contribute something. So when you have that deeper, almost spiritual, emotional aspect as to why you wanted to do freelancing in the first place, then definitely there's an emotional element. And self-soothing is really the skill to me where I'm able to calm myself down, is a really oversimplistic way of explaining it, but I am able to calm myself down when something doesn't go well. Precisely because there's no one to validate me, there's no one to tell me, yes, we're happy with where you're going, just keep going, it's fine, it's all good, you're green, you're on track, just carry on doing what you've been doing, because that person or those people do not exist for you. When something goes wrong, it can feel very personal. It can feel like, wow, I should have known that. Like I should have seen that coming. So there was definitely an element for me when I tried to turn everything that I didn't do perfectly the first time around. I tried to turn all of that on myself and became overly critical about whether I was ready for entrepreneurship, whether I was even a good coach, whether I would ever be able to make this work for myself. So self-soothing is really important in order for you to be able to stay on the journey. Because if you do the right things, and even if you do the wrong things, sooner or later you're going to realize you are doing the wrong things. So sooner or later you will get to results, but self-soothing is the piece where you are able to calm yourself down, comfort yourself, allow yourself to recover from mistakes and shortcomings, perhaps, way before other people can validate you. So self-soothing, I think, is a really important skill for freelancers, entrepreneurs, anyone who's working for themselves. Another really good skill is the skill to look at things holistically. So one of the things that really hit me, it shouldn't have hit me realistically, but I didn't really think about these things before. When I was leaving my corporate job and when I found coaching, I was super excited. Like I was filled to the brim with just expectation and anticipation, how amazing it's going to be and all that. So I wasn't really thinking in terms of the practicality of what it's like to set up a business and to run a business. And what really shocked me in the beginning was that how I had to do everything in one person. So if you are working in a corporate job, if you work in finance, you're not doing marketing. If you are working in sales, you're not doing HR. Now, when you start your own business, even if it's just you and there aren't a lot of people that you need to coordinate, but there are a lot of different kind of activities that you need to do. So starting out as a coach, there was coaching, which energetically speaking and anyway just very different from marketing yourself, getting out there, writing on social media, running sessions with potential clients. So there were like millions of things, and they all required my attention, but they all required a little bit of a different part of me. So coaching required that deeper part of me, seeing the connections, helping people, reading between the lines, listening to not just what the client is saying, but also what the client is not saying, because that's how I can really make a difference with them. And so that's sort of more like a softer, deeper side of me that was required for success. Then when it came to explaining what I was doing, it seemed like there was more like a more practical, more strategic part of me. Explaining the benefits of coaching is one of the harder things that I ever had to do, and learning how to describe that exactly from my perspective, not just generically about coaching, but what I do, how I do it, and what people can get out of that. That was really difficult to do. Again, required a very different side of me. Then invoicing and setting up my little systems of how to run things, where to capture things, where to save things, again required more of a practical 2 feet on the ground part of myself. So that to switch between these roles. So to be the coach, but as soon as my coaching session was finished, then I need to invoice the client or previous clients. Then I need to write something on LinkedIn or some other places. And so to switch so many times between the very different parts of myself, that was really difficult to do. The final one is the ability to describe the services that you're offering and why they are valuable to other people. I feel like this is something we talk about almost as an activity, as something we need to do, but I think we should talk about it because we should talk about it like it's a bigger piece of starting your own business and entrepreneurship, because it is a bigger piece. It's not just an activity, it's not just something that you do on any odd day. It's not like that. It's a huge thing, and it is a skill. To be able to understand your own value is a skill. One thing that really hit me once I started working for myself was that in corporate, I never really had to explain myself. I never really had to understand my value, because my value was attached to some other factors. So my value was attached to my education, to the number of years that I had worked in finance. My value was attached to how many people were reporting into me, and lots of other factors. So I never had to do like a value proposition type of exercise. I never really had to sell myself, because the different factors within my role sold me, so to speak, if it ever came to that. While being an entrepreneur, I had to explain what coaching is for. So there were so many different aspects of it, and so I definitely consider this a skill, and everything that is a skill is learnable and teachable, so that's the good news. In the beginning, I described myself, I'm a coach, and I honestly just expected people to say, really, how amazing, I have actually been looking for one. Now, that never happened. Starting a business is really, really difficult, because most of the time, there's no one around you to validate you, to comfort you, to tell you what to do, to say, hang on a second, no, you can't cross there because that's going to be really bad for you. None of that. You're just floating around in space trying to figure things out. Most of the time, it looks a bit like this. So over time, I understood myself as a coach. I understood my value more and more, and I was able to articulate what would happen if someone hired me as a coach. And then things became much, much easier. So these were the skills that I needed to learn as I was growing into an entrepreneur, and now I'm perfect and no longer make mistakes.
Oh,